Hello, dear community. We are back to our Ecocivilisation talks. So whoever is listening to us and is interested in transatlantic cooperation in the area of climate modeling, but not only that, today we will be talking also about the investments and why we are still seeing more greenwashing than serious moves towards the green technologies and green society. You are at the right place. So please, if you have questions, if you have comments, we are following this also on the streamed media. So you are more than welcome to place your questions, and we will share them with our participants. It is a real honor to welcome our guests. They will be introduced by Angela. She is our Ecocivilisation wing and node for Lithuania, and she is the one who put all this together. I'm honored to welcome her guests, and of course to welcome her and her real dedication to the green agenda and making sure that we respond in the right manner. So today, we would like to be a bit provocative. We live in times where, at least I was sure that the whole society will sincerely move towards minimizing our negative impact on nature, and we are part of the nature, so means towards ourselves. But what we see is something else emerging. The wars are escalating, they're causing more and more pollution, and people in this strange situation, when they feel uncertain, they go back to the old solutions, old technologies, back to coal, back to the old energy sources, whichever they have, to make sure that their winters will be warm. So what can we do? What is the modeling of our current situation showing us? What can we learn together? And how can we address this better? Well, that's why we're here today. And Angie, please go ahead, introduce your guests. And I'm very much looking forward to continue to listen to this very important discussion, which I'm sure we're going to go back to for many months, even years, when we will be searching for the right solutions to these pressing challenges.
Yeah, thank you, Violetta, so much for introducing us. So I will be short and go right to our panelists because they will make a major show on today in today's webinar. I just briefly tell that apart I work for Lithuanian Environmental Agency on CO2 emission inventories. I work from Brussels, so I also lead an official group so-called Club Climate Alpha, which is composed by professors from George Mason University, Purdue University, and from Transatlantic, and also from Spanish colleagues from Boston for climate research. We have German colleagues, we have Polish, Slovenian, Lithuanian, and so on. And our major goal is to promote climate analytics and integrated climate assessment models in order they would become powerful and indeed working tool to assess, let's say, climate transition and to make global, at least European Union, carbon neutral by 2050, but to add also to global debate. So here today,
Angie, your connection is really weak, so maybe you should consider switching off the video.
Yeah. So I will indeed, in Belgium, connection is very weak. So today we will speak mainly about how to boost financial climate investments, let's say how to overcome a climate investment gap and what we're doing right now in this direction. So here are three of our panelists. It's Alexander Golob. He leads carbon equity research entity in USA. He is also professor of George Mason University, and he has been working with World Bank, with International Monetary Fund, been advising governments, and recently still advising of governments on climate modeling. Here we have also Anil Markandia. He is a Nobel Prize winner. He originally works with Basque Climate Research Center. And here we have also Alden Celovic. He is originally Slovenian and he works with SAC Consulting in Vienna. He is responsible for communications of our Club Climate Alpha. So because indeed my connection is bad, so I give floor to Alexander Golob, who will briefly introduce, let's say, who is major our presenter and who will briefly introduce what we will speak today to our audience. Please, Alexander, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Angela, for introduction, and thank you for opportunity to speak on that webinar. And indeed, right now we have a lot of pressing priorities in the world, and war in Ukraine is screaming priority to resolve. And well, what can I say? To some extent, a lot of conflicts and a lot of problems we're facing now, one way or another, are connected to dependency on fossil fuel. And our job is to break this dependency. And well, although many people agree with that priority, still it's technically quite complicated. I wouldn't say very difficult, but complicated problem. And we cannot solve this problem without using power of market motivation, of market instruments. Because when I go briefly through the presentation, I will show you the magnitude of the problem, how much money we need to move from one place to another. And of course, to encourage investors to put in use economic motivation, we need to come up with a new system of indicators. Because when you're talking about the future, the value of green transition, of decarbonization as a part of green transition is hidden from the current market information. Because if you anticipate policy to be implemented in the future, we need to figure out how today investment will play in that decarbonizing world. And our group, and Angela, can you come back one slide, please? Come back one slide. No, just with a list of our participants. And we haven't kind of spontaneously, we might first submit a proposal to improve modeling instruments. And little by little, we build understanding that I need to come up with a new paradigm for modeling, for valuation, and help business community and help the society to come up with new metrics valuing benefits of green transition. And that's how it happened. I don't know if Alden would like to say a few words before we come to this formal presentation.
Yeah, Alden and Anil, please, yeah, we agree that you would tell a few your impressions, please.
Thank you. I want to say some of words about our role actually roles and obligations and previous results. So as a consulting, we were listed on these members from Vienna, Austria. We are working mainly on this communication, dissemination, exploitation part. Main topic for us is to target, identify and target different groups for our projects, how to communicate with them, how to pick up feedbacks to have as much as possible response, how to collect this data, analyze, and so on and so on. So that is in general about this, about dissemination exploitation part. I will say a few words later when I will talk about impact and implementation. So that is all, and that is our task, and we are mainly successful, or very successful with, in general, anyhow, with thresholds according to European Commission standard around 4 points per application. Well, about impact, about our part of impact, we are working mainly on topics and tools, how to maximize impacts, method and methodologies for progress of projects for specific industries, social regions, target groups inside population, or also is it transport, let's say industry related to transport or energy or any other manufacturing, which which is very important topic. About implementation part, we are usually talking about pilot projects. It is one or several pilot projects, depends on the calls. We are creating situation for pilot projects, and after that, our activities across dissemination exploitation part are mainly dedicated to pilot projects, piloting activities, analysis of pilot results, improvement of piloting, and so on and so on. On the end, I want to say, well, about this one very important topic in European Commission, that is data, big data issue. Well, the best possible basis for these results, communication, dissemination, analysis is a big data. But big data is a very complex things and very difficult to use as tool from European Commission because of rules, regulations, laws, and so on and so on. So we are trying to maximize impact and this big data things analysis with some of NPS metrics methods, analysis of market, and when we collect this survey and self-assessment says we identify average person or average industry or pilot project, whatever, and after that we combine several of this, and with computer simulation we are in way of very exact results on the end, which is simulate specific part of project. So that is something what we have in use. Well, about
so thank you.
About just a couple of words more about this disruptive, which is very important things I put here on chat. This is disruptive business model. We are working that, and we worked on our last call, and it is something what we have to develop in the future, and that's the topic particularly for Mr. Golub. So it is more or less everything for me. Of course, all previous are related with risks, and I put just several hints here about risks. And it is for this stage everything for me. Thank you for your time, and of course I'm available for questions and answers later.
Yeah. Thank you, Alden. So please, Anil, go ahead to tell a few your thoughts. Hi, Anil. Hi, Anil. I think he will speak later on. So Alexander, please, hi Anil, please go ahead with your impressions on our work. I think it's a bit.
Maybe you are on mute, so you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Anil, please unmute. Yeah, you are muted, Anil. Yeah, now it's okay, please. I think maybe Anil come back to us during the presentation.
Anil, take a look at the video, stop video, and choose video settings and check what is your output. Put it on the middle because it's probably on low, and that's why we don't hear you.
No problem. I think let's give Anil a word at the very end of presentation, or he can comment on something what Alexander going to tell. So please, Alexander, now I already share a screen with presentation, and you will tell me which slide to go, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Angela. And let's go to the second slide. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
It didn't change. Yeah. So you can see it's quite a diverse and multidisciplinary group. And Angela already told about that. And I need to tell that Angela was in the beginning of this process. And I appreciate very much her efforts to organize this group. Well, but back to the topic, we believe that green transition and decarbonization of the global economy may become a new engine for economic growth, because it means that we substitute human capital, knowledge, artificial intelligence for traditional capital and fossil fuel resources, because when you deploy alternative energy, wind and solar, you create tremendous opportunities for electric vehicles, for 3D printing, for robots, and other instruments that, in combination with human capital, will change radically productivity of economy. And if you'd like to be more on philosophical side of discussion, in the end of the day, to transform capitalism and transform that,
Alexander, yeah,
in a way that yeah, Angela.
Sometimes it's maybe my internet. I hear you know, with some breaks. Is it okay for Violetta?
No, it's okay, Angie. We hear it really well, and we see the picture.
So it means my internet. Then I am pretty calm. Please, Alexander. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and you know, when you're talking about man-made capital and natural resources, so then it's rivalry and exclusive resource, and that's why it's unevenly distributed across society. When you're talking about human capital, it might be more evenly distributed across society. And when you're talking about alternative energy, again, you build that little by little, and you can scatter that production. So in all respects, protecting environment, making society better. Now, of course, question is how to make that work, and market motivation plays an important role. Angela, can you move to the next slide, please?
Yeah, please.
Because I think you stopped sharing. Did you?
Yeah, no, I now share it again because I've been disconnected totally from my internet. So now this one, please.
And again, we have pressing priorities like war in Ukraine and needs to strengthen Euro-Atlantic cooperation on the short run to cut off Europe from Russian supply of natural gas to break that dependency, and on the long run, just to secure supply chains and so on. So energy, again, could be kind of in the heart of this cooperation. But what we are talking about? We're talking about quite significant shifts in investment patterns. Well, if we need to ramp up investment up to $5 trillion by 2030, it's about 1/3 of available investment pool. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to generate new investment on top. It's more like we need to reprogram investment that was aimed to traditional ways of making money into something new, which is green transition and decarbonization of the global economy. Well, to move this investment, we need to explain to investors how to make money from that green transition, because there is some investors like impact investors and investors that are looking at socially responsible investing. They already on the market, but it's not even close to $5 trillion a year. It's much smaller, maybe 10, maybe 8 times smaller than we need to be. So we need to add motivation. And well, to motivate investors, we need to provide them with quantitative method, how to calculate future return on this investment. And that's how this idea of climate alpha came to life. And alpha investing, it's quite known and described in finance textbook investment strategy, looking for some kind of abnormal return on the market. We just borrow that term from conventional literature on finance, and so that, well, green transition creates abnormal return in the future on investment that are well positioned to make good return in the decarbonizing world. So the question is how to measure that. And that's why we come up with this idea to measure climate alpha, which is both result of, can we go to the next slide, please? A result of decarbonization of global economy, as it also because unfortunately we will be suffering and continue suffering from climate change itself. Adapting to climate change also creates positive climate alpha on investment. Well, as I said, profit-driven motivation. We cannot go away of profit-driven motivation. And the good news is that it looks like green transition based on human capital, like increase of green energy production, creates opportunity not only to decarbonize the economy, but also to increase productivity. And the new economic growth theory suggests, and actually Paul Romer, he got a Nobel Prize for his work on new growth theory in 2018, along with William Nordhaus, whose integrated assessment model, economic growth and climate change, we were using for a few decades now. So anyway, increasing return to scale. When you have massive technological innovations, you have increasing return. It's good news because you increase productivity, society getting more prosperous and so on. But bad news is that you may have been can get in a development trap. So if you don't mobilize resources at some point, you're gonna get in development trap. Like look at former socialist bloc, like countries like Russia, Kazakhstan, they still kind of lagging in development. And well, Russia, it's a different story. I think it's what's gonna happen to Russian economy. It's well, I wouldn't even comment today. But countries like Czech Republic, for example, almost catch up with France in terms of per capita production. So green transition could be a condition or incentive or catalyst of this catching up with the most developed countries, and for most developed countries to maybe to go to the next level of equilibrium trajectory. Next slide, please. Angela, can you go forward with next slide? Well, how this transition gonna happen? And that's where I'd like to draw your attention to well, quite inconvenient realization about where we should be in terms of keeping temperature below, well below 2 degrees Celsius increase above pre-industrial level, and where current policy gonna bring us. And unfortunately, there is a huge difference between where we should be and where we're gonna be if we do nothing in terms of radical changes in climate policy. And changes could be introduction of carbon tax, tightening common and control regulation, could be various instruments. But next slide, please. Angela, next slide. Yeah, thank you. But on the right hand side upper panel, you see this decarbonization pathways. Lower line, it's what we really like to be, decarbonization by 2050. But if we don't do not much, maybe just because technologies are in place, technologies are alternative technologies are superior relative to fossil fuel technologies. Problem is that we accumulated quite a lot of capital in fossil fuel technologies. So anyway, there is another pathway that if we wouldn't strengthen climate policy, that's where we're gonna be, and then temperature will be like a few days ago. It was a report, if I think it's done by one of European research institution, that if we gonna be on current trajectory, then definitely it's gonna be around 3 degree increase. That's unacceptable. We're suffering from current increase of temperature, and we just barely 1 degree above pre-industrial. So it suggests that corrections of climate policy will be abrupt, and those corrections will result in suddenly in tightening of policy targets. And then, of course, investors who was already on trajectory to decarbonize economy and build a long position on investment in alternative energy, electric cars, 3D printing, and so on, would get market premium, and that's what we call climate alpha. Some investors that still betting on fossil fuel end up with stranded assets. Next slide, please. Angela, next slide, please. Oh, well, anyway, while Angela is changing slides.
Alexander, can
yeah.
I ask you a question here, because this jump diffusion process is interesting. Could you just say a couple of words about what are the mechanisms at the back that need to exist in order for this jump diffusion to take place?
Oh, well, thank you. That's a very good question, because how it's gonna happen, and I wish Angela would change that slide, but on one, there are pressures from different ends. Disruptive technological innovations, then political pressure, because thank you, that's one. More extreme weather events, more public pressure on politicians to change policy. And remember, like first pilot phase, European Union emission trading scheme. As soon as policy was announced, then there was massive investment into decarbonization. Of course, pilot phase was pilot phase. And then it was a kind of disruption between pilot phase and implementation of EU ETS later. But again, implementation, decision, major policy announced, investors start to investing money in the decarbonization of the economy. And it's create a kind of excessive demand for alternative technologies and for capital. And that's why we are talking about jump process.
So may I also just read you a question from Leslie? How would you actually define, what would you say that jump diffusion is? Just a simple definition.
Oh, well, when reacting on announced policy or in anticipation of a new climate policy, well, maybe not all, but a significant number of investors try to implement decarbonization of green technologies. And this period is happening in a relatively short time. So then you have this jump. And
that is a dramatic change on the redistribution of investments behavior towards a new goal.
Yes, absolutely. That's much better answer than I can give. That's when suddenly investors understand, oh, what we did was wrong, and we need to change our investment behavior. But then there is simply not enough capital, not enough resources to accommodate all that demand within a short period of time. That's why what economists would suggest, okay, if you know that policy will be implemented, then it's better to start doing something before that and just prolong this period. But unfortunately, in real life, people are myopic. And so anyway, this quote from Philippe Aghions's book, and I highly recommend Power of Creative Destruction. And in that book, he explains much better how these disruptive processes are happening. And I'd like to, Angela, can you please move 2 slides ahead to the graph? Because I think this graph will help us to better understand that jump diffusion process and how this current evaluation technique fails us. So next, one more, Angela. Yeah, this one. You see, this is a hypothetical example. No, just one back, Angela. Yes, this one. A hypothetical example of 3 type of investment. One is this gray line, does investment into green technologies, into carbon-free technologies, and so on. Red line, just investment, nothing to do with decarbonization, but also nothing to do with fossil fuels. I would say that, would call that climate neutral investment. Although it's difficult to find climate neutral investment because adaptation is economy-wide process. And then fossil fuel investment, and it is this orange line. And when you are in the year 2020, you look at market data and you see that well, fossil fuel investment doing quite well, while investment into alternative technologies are not. And this graph shows return on investment in percentage points, and you have also dashed line weighted average cost of capital. Wow. Just think about that as a price you pay if you'd like to borrow capital, invest, and of course you'd like to make some more money on top of this cost of capital. So that's how it works. So if you look at current market data and you prorate current return for the future, you would say that green investment, well, it's not the best option, because you are ignoring what will happen after 2024, when there will be climate policy shock, and climate policy shock will send investment into fossil fuel down, and while create a significant excessive return on investment into green capital. And it's difficult to model such kind of shocks. We have some experience, like World Bank study on carbon-dependent nations that was exactly to model that kind of shocks, but on the level of countries, not corporations. And our group would like to extend this methodology to measures for corporations, but even maybe more important to convince fund managers to look at this information beyond that next few years of investment planning horizon. So that's why our multidisciplinary group pays a lot of attention to communication, how to explain importance of this methodology to business, to policymakers, to civil society, because we cannot be myopic and we cannot overlook this significant chunk of future return on investment. And this understanding of this future return on investment would make the difference in investing behavior today. Angela, please, next slide.
I have one question here because I'm not really clear. I somehow feel that this is important to understand. So EU made this huge announcement for green policies. Yeah. So investors became excited because there was a 30-year plan by 2050. But do I understand correctly that just by announcing these policies, we can create this shock because there is not enough resources available to follow the policy? Is that correct?
Yes, because if you just announce this plan, okay, we need to decarbonize our economy in 30 years. And if you don't support that with some, like I was presenting at International Energy Workshop a few weeks ago, why we still need carbon tax if we have superior alternative technologies. Because still investors are investors, and if you're talking about mainstream investors, they'd like to gain some return on those investments. What creates this return? Higher productivity, and we gonna harvest that. But when you pile up investment, like first mover would benefit in the future when it will be bigger scale. But to kick off old funds that runs on fossil fuel and to increase return on investment into alternative energy and related processes, you need public policy, because
pay attention to the story. Helen Haxel was able to any
because when you just announce policy like long-term target, but don't support that with some kind of economic instruments, that's what's gonna happen. Like I showed you this emission gap even with updated NDCs, we still far from this emission trajectory. So eventually, policymakers need to commit policy that either create new standards or carbon tax or cap and trade, whatever, pick the policy instruments, but it should be a kind of policy shock, and then it will be after that investment and shock, and what we also call abatement short squeeze. That's how it's gonna happen. And to understand all details, we need quite sophisticated modeling instruments, and our group is trying to build such kind of a tool. I don't know if I answered your question or well, it's a complicated process, but our contribution is just to help to demystify that a little bit. So anyway, mark-to-market valuation, when you just look at existing historical market data, will tell you that return on investment, negative climate alpha, it's carbon intensive capital, is your winner in competition. But if you take into account future return on investment, then using Mark II model valuation of investment that takes into account future information about return on those assets, then you would select alternative green and low carbon investment. So then this selection of this methodology, this valuation technique is important, but to enable this valuation technique, we need quite sophisticated modeling instruments. And Angela, if you just show last slide that we will show this framework of modeling framework. No, not that one. Yeah, we can show that. Oh, well, yeah, this one before. It's quite yeah, this one. Quite sophisticated modeling framework that would include different instruments. So our know-how, well, is to position that framework as a kind of docking station, because if not each day, but each week, you get new publicly available quantitative instruments online. Well, still, you need to figure out how to use them. New databases. Actually, access to individual analytical tools, it's not a problem anymore, or it will not be a problem in a couple of years. We have a lot of modeling instruments available online. Now the question is how to put them together to model this transition, how to connect that with communication efforts, because there is no use for our knowledge, even if we create something genius, but if nobody care about that, nobody knows about that, and nobody acts on that information, then it's useless. Also, understanding of what is going on in society. When society is fed up with that emission gap and will push on politicians. So that's also quite important element to take that into account, because it's a major driver for these policy changes and policy shocks. So that's what we are about. And of course, we'd like to get to investment community. I have some experience working on Wall Street for a short period of time, and we have also my friend and colleague of mine, John Under, who spent decades on Wall Street. And it's not a very easy task to convince investment bankers to change valuation methodology, but I think it's time now. Also, politicians. Why it's important to explain carbon alpha to politicians? Because politicians are using public money, and criteria maybe different than profit-driven motivation, but public money could be used as a good leverage to push private investors even further and do something that is in accord with that long-term decarbonization goals. One example is protection of tropical forest. We call it RED, reduction to avoid the deforestation and forest degradation, compensation for that. It's important part of abatement strategies that is not covered just by energy sector.
Maybe here make just a quick comment, because this is a very important message to policymakers. What you just said is matching the public money with the private money, and many times this is considered as a sort of non-people focused intention, but with the InvestEU and prior to that Juncker's fund, which was used for guarantee schemes in order to bring private investors on board and lower the risk of their investments, turned out to be extremely successful. Is that, I mean, do you consider that as in your model as part of the solution?
Of course, any this what you see now on the screen is a technical tool, just to measure return. Then, if you'd like to move further, you need to think about innovative financial instruments. And you gave this example, and it's an excellent example. I can give you another example. I was last several years I was working with Environmental Defense Fund and with 𝐀𝐥𝐞𝐿 Capital to create investment fund to support avoid tropical deforestation. Also, we propose a number of innovative financial mechanisms, and that's very important next step. When you have evaluation technique in place, then how to use those innovative instruments and leverage using public funds to leverage private investments. Use it like almost like a transistor, when you have small intervention and then you change direction of much bigger flow, because public funds cannot compete with private funds. And our job is to make sure that, and for capital, well, if it is about increased productivity, then I think market motivation will welcome high educated workforce, combination of green transition with artificial intelligence and with 3D printing and green energy, hydrogen production, and so on. So we are in a kind of unique situation when we can align leapfrog to the next level of economic development and saving environment. And it's not only about climate, it's also about circular economy. Plastic pollution is getting more and more screaming on us problem, and biodiversity, well, you name it. And all of that needs to be addressed. And all of that could be, and air pollution. outdoor and indoor air pollution also. It's kind of killing, not killing, well, sometimes it's literally killing people, but sometimes it's one of the reason to reduce productivity and so on. So I think if we put that all together in one framework, when we really make a strong case that green development and socio-economic development in general right now going in quite parallel, well, I think we'll get public consensus, and when we get public consensus, we have more pressure on politicians. Politicians are inherently myopic, and that's difficult for them to really, they can announce long-term plans, but they are under pressure of current situation, and I wouldn't like to be in their shoes, especially now, because we have pressing priorities that we need to resolve on real time. They need to do that. Well, how we can help them? Well, green transition, explanation of power of market instruments, innovative financial instruments, and specifically here, new method to evaluate benefits.
Alexander, this is, again, it's a new expression, and could you elaborate it a little bit better? Climate assets. So how would you group? What do you consider as a climate asset?
Oh, well, there is kind of a few different lines, just analogous to fossil fuel assets. Because first, it's alternative energy production, wind, solar, hydrogen, and whatever else you use to decarbonize economy. I would be a little bit careful with carbon capturing and storage. Well, then tropical forest, boreal forests, that's climate assets. On another side, when we're talking about adaptation, again, buildings resilient to climate change also could be recorded as a climate asset. Then you have spillover effect, like fossil fuel. We have deposit of oil, gas, then you have refineries and pipelines and so on. So then you have infrastructure that benefits from alternative energy. For example, why I'm talking about 3D printing. 3D printing is very energy intensive, or hydrogen production. Also, green hydrogen is also quite energy intensive. But if you are looking at a grid where you have nearly 100% of renewable energy, and production goes up and down and not necessarily match demand when you need that. So you need to build much more capacities to produce alternative energy just to reduce the risk of you're not able to meet critical demand. Then from time to time you have excess of electricity production. So then you can run 3D printers, you can produce hydrogen. Then when you have deficit in energy grid, you stop production, and you can do that in real time. And using artificial intelligence, you can looking at weather conditions, you can plan in advance. So then there's a second layer of climate assets. So with capital that benefits from the decarbonization, 3D printers, robots, and information technologies, AI, smart grid. So that's, if you look around, then one way or another, almost everything will be, will to some extent has embedded climate alpha. That is part of this decarbonization process. That's why we are talking about, well, if International Energy Agency and Kearney report estimates around $5 trillion of investment into decarbonization. If you take into account what is second and third layer of transformation of the economy, well, to some extent, almost everything will be touched by that process of decarbonization. And then, of course, climate assets, it's kind of, I think it's good for PR, but it also has quite meaning, and climate alpha, this methodology will let you to calculate this value in a way that Wall Street is used to do.
Alexander, we have another question in the same direction. Leslie, again, is the one who's asking, why do you say that carbon banks are questionable, thinking about constructive wetlands and peat bogs?
Well, I think you have a much lower cost solution. Well, I wouldn't rule that out. I think that especially now, when we still a learning period, we need to consider and try different technologies. But what latest analysis on deep decarbonization suggests that there is plausible scenario when you go net zero just using wind and solar. It's extreme scenario, and you shouldn't rule a priori anything, unless it's really harmful, like if you replace one bad solution with another bad solution. I think carbon capturing and storage is potentially could be important technology, and but again, maybe some other technologies would be more competitive. That's the only reason.
Please go ahead.
So I think that's all on my side, and that's questions was quite good. It helped me to basically avoid just a formal concluding part, because I think you touched everything.
So Alexander, if you needed to pass 2 or maximum 3 key messages at the end of your presentation, what would those 3 messages be?
Well, first of all, next 30 years, we have unique chance to combine significant improvements of productivity of the global economy. Well, hard to say about global economy, but at least Euro-Atlantic part of that, with deep decarbonization and greening of economy. If even 5 years ago, conventional way to present on climate policy was, oh, well, it costs some money, but we avoid climate damage. Now we can say with quite confidence that you both create high productivity and you create a better economy, not only more productive, but more just and more equitable, because reliance on human capital and scattered production of energy makes society rich in not in a completely equitable way, but much more just than current, and society based on fossil fuel. That's first. Second, of course, to convince business, to convince policymakers, to convince public, civil society, we need quantitative instruments. We need to explain, like to show numbers, how it's gonna happen and how you're gonna benefit on that. So it's require quite sophisticated modeling tools. So what we're trying to do, our group led by Angela, we're trying to build a multidisciplinary team just to combine this complexity with communication to the rest of the world, because we cannot simplify models because process is difficult, but we need to figure out how to communicate results in the way that demystify those results and kind of encourage all participants to act on this information. And third message is that this process is not like not a linear process. It's non-linear and with some kind of thresholds and so on. We need to be extremely specific about using public money to use it in the best way to move private capital. So that would be my third message. That's although looks like climate alpha evaluation methodology addressed first of all to investment banking, also for policymakers, it's very important to understand that evaluation methodology just to better use public funds. And if you let me fourth message, I think it could be on the shorter run, it could be a very important common goal for transatlantic cooperation, because we have very serious challenges. And my parents, my mother from Ukraine, father was born in Poland, I was born in Moscow. Last 25 years I'm in United States, so my roots are on both sides of Atlantic, and I may still need to learn a lot, but I'm understanding this problem from both sides. And I think we need to figure out how to increase this cooperation. And I think this energy independence of Euro-Atlantic civilization would be, well, quite important priority for us. And green transition is an instrument. So, well, thank you. I think I took too much of your attention.
Thank you, Alexander. You are very good in presenting. You know, he is a real academician, but also practitioner. I just want to precise that I coordinate this group, but still, you know, and our scientific, you know, major contributions lies with Alexander and Neil and Mikhail, and so on, communication with Alden, and that we are not closed group. Everyone is welcome to approach us, to write to me or to Alexander, and we put you in our club and in our application, because now we still informal, but we hope that during year we will get formalized in some country here in Europe, in Belgium, Lithuania, or Spain, like startup or like some, I don't know, non-profit entity. We look for different, let's say, options. For the time being, we're still hunting for funding, but I think during the year we will start our operations, and everyone from who is doing analytics, communications, let's say, education, some, you know, policy insights and inputs, it's most welcome to come to us, and we put you on board. Normally we meet each Tuesday to discuss our different projects and so on and so on. And if you are willing, so we meet Commission, meet Parliament, and US embassies here in Brussels and in Vilnius, to try and to get attention from public institutions, government. So and we were very successful. We met already Cabinet Dombrovskis with help of Violeta, recently DG Klima, then Cabinet of President Metsola, and so on and so on. So most welcome to write, and we gladly put everyone on our board. But now to end up, I hope that Anil can speak already. Please, Anil, because he is Nobel Prize winner and he works with the PCC. Hi, Anil. I think it's got almost not moving. But he is not much talkative. He just would confirm what Alexander said. But he is very, very smart guy, and I know that they know each other, Alexander and Daniel, for almost decades. So.
Thank you very much, Angie, and thank you really, Alexander and Aldin, to share with us all the information about this exciting project. It sometimes, when things are too complex, we lose the interest. But I think this is such an important element that is worth following your progress and see how we can all learn and promote this kind of conclusions that Alexander shared with us, they are very clear, these 4 conclusions. So maybe, Aldin, you got good material for the promotion as well, so for the future steps. So because we answered all the questions from the chat already while we were discussing this, I would just invite one more time if there are any other remaining questions that somebody would like to ask, maybe Manica or Lysel or any one of you wants to add additional comment, and then
yes,
we will closely. Yes,
actually, I would like to ask, where can we access more information about your project or about your collaboration?
Oh, well, I think Angela would be the best position to do that. But also, we now writing kind of working paper, just explaining this climate alpha. But Angela, maybe you say a few words.
You know, we started to establish social media, and we start to establish our website. So I will put some more information about our club, because as we've been, you know, established in March formally, we're signing memorandum of understanding very loose, like individuals, even not organizations. I can send to you, and then you are part of the club and you can participate in our calls. In recent times, you know, this month we've been busy in writing one application for funding after another, deadlines. Besides this, they're pretty not very confidential, but there is competition, so we normally keep them. I'm sorry. So we much busy just, you know, succeeding with our meetings with Commission, Parliament, with applications. Now we have European Innovation Council accelerators, and we have Life for a Scene, and another Horizon. So normally, you know, our projects we keep pretty close. So if you want to know something, they would not be copied. So until we get money to our startup. So this, if you want something more, so I can send you some, you know, more materials which we have on board. As I said, maybe by autumn, maybe for accelerate application, we will make some small website already, and then it will be a bit more let's say, information about us. For the time being, on public space, it's almost nothing. Yeah.
Okay. For me, it's crucial information. What do you need to spread the knowledge that you are obtaining? Because I think this awareness is the key to understanding everything and make it more simple for broader audience to understand and see the importance of the work you do. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for us, what is important, first step is like webinars like this, just to share the idea. But for the next step, and that's why Angela is so keen to raise some seed funds, because to talk to, let's say, to Wall Street, we need a kind of demonstration project, like even to build a kind of straw man to show nuts and bolts how this technology works. Policy dialogue, I think it's still you need to come up with quite innovative way to model transition. And again, you need some quantitative results to tell politicians that you can really combine economic growth and green transition. Some elements exist, but we need to put them together. And of course, communication. Communication, I'd say 50% of efforts need to be focused on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and most welcome, Monica, if you can add to our, let's say, education. Let's say it would be something, because it's a big part also of our accelerate application. It's also to do education, communication, to educate publics, and then to attract, let's say, funds once we get some seed money, let's say, from Commission. So this is, as I said, most welcome to write to us, and we put you on board, and we find what to do. For the time being, you know, I because I am public servant recently, so I simply devote some my time. I cannot have some profitable job. I simply that we will get well, and once I finish, you know, once I finish, I switch on. But as I said, sure, most welcome, you know, to do, and I would be much happy that some strong organizer along with me would be on the board, because normally I spend a lot of all my weekends recently to polish proposals, you know, to work through IT systems, to put proposals, you know, to submit them, and so on and so on. But it's very good that I have very good, strong, let's say, theory and professional team, which gives a lot of good materials for me to put on project.
Thank you, Angie. And I think this was, we're losing you again, Angie. So,
especially you cannot hear me. Yeah.
No, but I would like to slowly bring this session to an end, if you
Yeah.
allow me.
Yeah.
I think the messages were very clear. The need or the benefits of having a more systemic approach to this and control these bursts better, and help investors as well as the administrations to lead the change in a more predictable and a more gradual way. Those messages were very clear. So thank you very much to all of you for this collaboration. Thank you to everyone who's listening us on live on streamed media. And this is just the beginning. So we'll touch base with you again when there is a bigger progress made, and let people know what's happening with your project. So thanks a lot, and I wish you all the best.